Endless Waterfall by J. Pilgrim. Chapter 1. An Unexpected Meeting. The sun was merciless. It beat down on the cracked asphalt of the Horowhenua main road, where a thin shimmer of heat danced in the distance like a bad joke. Joe walked on the grass verge, the cotton of his white singlet tucked into the waistband of his jeans, sweat glinting on his shoulders. His boots kicked up little clouds of dust with every step. He didn't bother checking behind him anymore. No one had stopped to offer him a ride. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't going anywhere in particular. North was good enough. There was always something north of wherever you were. The road stretched straight through fields browned by summer. Cows stood huddled beneath lone trees, flicking their tails, chewing like they'd figured out the secret to peace. Joe shifted the weight of his pack on one shoulder. It wasn't heavy. Just enough to live, just enough to move. A few clothes, a towel, a half-eaten pack of crackers, and a photo of someone he didn't talk about. The wind had died. Even the cicadas sounded like they were sick of it all. Joe swiped at the back of his neck. His body was lean and built, the kind of muscle you didn't get from a gym. He looked like someone who could handle himself in a fight, or at least wouldn't back down. Hair shaggy, jawline sharp. Eyes hidden behind scratched sunglasses. He hadn't smiled in a few days. He was running from his checkered past in the capital city of Wellington. The fence line curved ahead, where a wide farm gate sat open. High bushes lined a gravel driveway which led to a cluster of weathered sheds and an old farmhouse with rust-red roofing. Joe barely glanced at it. Just another farm. Just another piece of the country that didn't belong to him. Then he heard tires spinning on loose gravel. Before he could react, a car burst out of the driveway. A beat-up silver Helix, its front wheels slipping slightly before gripping the road. Joe stepped sideways on instinct, but not fast enough. Thump. It wasn't hard. Not enough to knock him over, but the corner of the front bumper clipped his hip and spun him a half step. Shit, he hissed, steadying himself. The Helix skidded to a halt. The engine idled with a rattle, door already flying open. A woman's voice shot out. "Oh my God, are you okay?" Joe turned, sunglasses still on, one hand on his hip where it already throbbed. Dust rising around them. The woman was in her early 20s, black jeans, work boots, and a tank top stained from farm work. Her auburn hair was tied up, loose strands clinging to her forehead. She looked like she could throw a hay bale and then tell you off for looking surprised. Joe didn't answer right away. He just looked at her and then at the car. She came closer, worry in her eyes. "You need a ride to A&E or something?" "I swear I didn't see you. I'm good," he said finally. His voice was low, calm. "Just a love tap," she blinked. "That was not a love tap, you sure?" He pulled up his singlet to check for damage. A red smear already blooming on his side, but nothing serious. Seen worse. Felt worse. "You hitching?" "Trying to. Where to?" "North." She looked him up and down. Not in a flirtatious way. More like she was assessing whether he was dangerous or just another idiot with no plan. "You always walk the road in 30-degree heat?" He shrugged. "Better than walking it in the rain." She let out a dry laugh, unsure if he was joking. "Well, you're lucky I didn't hit you harder. Name's Lana. You want a lift to town?" Joe considered her for a beat. He hadn't planned on talking to anyone today, but getting out of the sun? That was a bonus. He nodded once. "Joe." She tilted her head toward the passenger door. "Hop in, Joe. You can have a ride with me to Levin, if you trust my driving. I'll try not to hit any more hitchhikers." As he hobbled around the front of the Helix, Joe glanced back at the fields. The cicadas kept buzzing. The road stretched on behind him like a story he didn't want to keep reading. He climbed in. The door, which had seen better days, slammed shut behind him. And just like that, he was moving again. The farm ute rattled over the coarse chip seal, a lazy hum rising from the tires. Lana had one hand on the wheel and the other hanging loosely out the window, fingers catching the breeze. Joe sat beside her, backpack wedged between his knees, sweat drying on his collarbone. The cab smelled faintly of earth, hay, and the cheap coconut air freshener swinging from the rearview mirror. He leaned against the door, arm resting on the sill, letting the wind hit his face. His sunglasses were still on, but she could feel him watching her in flashes. "So," Lana said, breaking the silence, "you sure that hip's not broken?" Joe glanced down at it. "Nah, still attached." "Hurts like hell, though." "Good. If you sued me, I'd have to sell a cow." "Don't worry, I'm not the litigious type," she smirked. "No, you're the walk down the road in the heat like a slow-burning country song type." Joe cracked a grin, just a hint. First one of the day. Lana was striking in a way that didn't ask for attention. Strong features. Freckles sun-dusted across her nose. Her tank top clung to her back, darkened with perspiration. There was a faded tattoo just below her left shoulder. A line of script he couldn't read without staring, and he wasn't ready to push it. Joe himself looked like someone you didn't want to trust right away. Good-looking, but in a rough way. His dark hair needed a cut, jawline shaded with days of stubble. His arms were roped with lean muscle, sun-kissed and scabbed in places. There was something restless in the way he sat, like he was always bracing for impact, even when the road was smooth. "So, where'd you come from?" Lana asked, as the road curved around a grove of macrocarpa trees. "Wellington. Going any direction in particular?" Joe shrugged. "Forward's the only one that counts." She nodded like she understood. "And what's up north of here?" He didn't answer right away. "Don't know yet. Might be something, might be nothing." "You always this cryptic?" "Only when someone's looking too close." She laughed. A real one this time. She liked his rhythm. He didn't force things. No small talk about the weather or fuel prices or what school you went to. There was something raw about him, like he was unpolished on purpose. "What about you?" Joe asked, shifting in his seat. "You live on that farm?" "Yeah, family land. Been in the blood since forever. My parents and I run it. Dairy and a few sheep." "You like it?" "Some days." She squinted against the sun. "Other days I think about moving on and seeing the world." Joe adjusted the sun visor. "What stops you?" "The animals and the lifestyle." They rode in silence for a while, the flat fields giving way to the outskirts of Levin. Low roofs, big yards, industry, and the occasional dog barking at nothing in particular. Joe looked ahead, then out the window. "You ever get tired of this place?" Lana kept her eyes on the road. "Sometimes. But it's home." He nodded slowly. "Must be nice. Having somewhere that sticks." She glanced sideways at him. "You don't?" Joe shrugged. "Wellington was home. But I had to make a move." There was a pause. The tires hummed over the road. She stole a glance at him. This wandering guy with a sore hip and nowhere to go. There was something about him that didn't match the drift. He didn't talk like someone who was lost. More like someone who was choosing not to be found. "Got family?" she asked. "No family." She didn't press. The way he said it closed the door gently but firmly. The ute rolled into Levin proper. The wide main street lined with small shops and food outlets bustled with people young and old. An aged couple crossed at the lights, hand in hand, moving slow like time didn't bother them anymore. "Where do you want me to drop you?" Lana asked. "Just up by that cafe will do." Lana edged the farm ute into a parking space. Joe opened the door, one boot touching the ground, then paused. "You saved me a couple hours walking." "Appreciate it. You sure you don't need an ice pack or a drink or something?" He shook his head. "I'll manage." She hesitated. "You got a phone?" "Nope." "Figures." She reached into the glove box, pulled out a pen and wrote something on the back of a faded farm receipt. "My number. In case you change your mind about the ice pack, or the drink." "Or Levin." Joe took it. tucked it in his pocket like it was just another piece of paper, but it felt heavier than that. "Thanks," he said, stepping out. She watched him mount the pavement. He slung the backpack over his shoulder and started walking toward the cafe. Still limping a bit. Still cool as hell. Nice butt, she thought. Lana put the ute in gear but allowed the vehicle to idle. There was something about the way he carried himself that stayed with her, like a storm that hadn't broken yet. And she had a feeling he wasn't just passing through. Not really. Change of mind. Inside, the cafe was smart with brightly painted walls, recycled wood tables, and an espresso machine that hissed like it was mad at someone. A few people sat on chairs, engaged in either eating or gossiping. The cafe had shade, cold water, and the promise of caffeine. Joe's first stop was the cafe's bathroom. Minutes later, he stood at the counter, looking at the chalkboard menu. Eggs every way. Overpriced smoothies, something called a deconstructed BLT that made him frown slightly. He didn't care much what he ate. He cared about sitting still. His singlet clung to his back from the walk. He still had a slight limp from the knock, which made him eager to sit down. He looked sharper now. Cleaner lines in his jaw, dark hair damp from splashing water on his face in the bathroom. He had removed his sunglasses and placed them in his backpack. Behind him, the bell above the door jingled. "Figured I'd find you here," Lana said, brushing her hair off her forehead. Joe turned with a surprised smile. Lana gave him a look, half playful, half curious. "Figured I'd refuel on coffee and eggs. And a better read on the guy I nearly ran over." Joe smiled once more but said nothing. Lana noticed his eyes were sharper than she expected. "Blue, mind if I join you?" He shook his head and gestured to a corner table. "Be my guest." They slid into the booth opposite each other. Joe shrugged off his backpack. Lana stretched her legs out, boots tapping against the steel table leg. That's when Gwendoline appeared. "Hey, Lana." "Holy crap, it is you." Gwen bounced over, notepad in hand, blonde hair tied up in a high ponytail that swayed with her hips. She wore the cafe's black apron over a snug white t-shirt that didn't leave much to imagination. She leaned into the table like it owed her rent. "And who's this?" she asked, eyes sliding over Joe like he was something sweet behind a glass counter. "Gwen, meet Joe," Lana said, with a sly grin. Gwen's gaze didn't leave him. "Hi, Joe. I'm Gwen. Welcome to Levin. We don't usually get this kind of traffic." Joe gave her a polite nod. "Thanks," Lana smirked. "We went to college together," she said to Joe, like that explained everything. "Gwen knows everyone." "I do," Gwen said, not looking away. "Especially when they look like you." Joe blinked. Lana gave him a dry look. "She's always like this," Lana said. "Don't mind her." "Oh, hush," Gwen said, tapping her pen on the table, then turning to Lana. "You bringing Joe to the party on Saturday or what?" Lana rolled her eyes. "He's not my date, Gwen. Didn't say he was, just said bring him." "Makes the party more fun." She finally tore her eyes off Joe and scribbled something on her pad. "Right. 2 long blacks, and the works breakfast for both?" "Sounds good," Lana said. Joe nodded. "Sure." As Gwen walked away, Lana gave Joe an exaggerated sigh. "Sorry about her. She flirts like it's a competitive sport." Joe gave his cool smile again. "She's got energy." Lana mused. "Like a golden retriever with a fine nose." They laughed lightly. "You always come here?" he asked. "Every so often. Good coffee. And Gwen usually sneaks me extra hash browns if I pretend to gossip." Seemed like she already knew everything, Joe quietly remarked. "She usually does." Small town. Outside, a breeze lifted a paper napkin off a table. Inside, the cafe was all low chatter and ceramic clinks. The kind of place where time slowed down just enough to catch your breath. Joe leaned back. "Thanks for the ride again. No worries. You looked like you needed a break. Or maybe a nudge." He tilted his head. What do you think I needed?" Lana looked at him long enough to make it feel like she was really seeing him. Then she shrugged. "Breakfast," she said. Start there. And for the first time in a while, Joe felt like staying put might not be the worst idea. The job offer. Later, the breakfast plates were already half cleared, eggs demolished, sourdough crusts pushed to the edge, long blacks going lukewarm in ceramic cups. The customer rush had thinned, and a warm breeze drifted through the cafe's open front windows. Outside, Levin moved slowly. Inside, the table in the corner felt like its own little pause in time. Joe sat back, relaxed now, legs stretched under the table, arms resting on either side like he'd claimed the booth. His hair had dried into unruly waves, darker at the roots from sweat or maybe just summer. His white singlet was fitted. Clean lines over a ripped body clearly shaped by labor. Lana stirred the last of her coffee, watching him in between sips. She looked different now. Less farm grit, more natural softness. Dark eyes that caught things quickly. A few freckles across her collarbone, a silver ring on her finger she spun when she was thinking. Her jeans were cuffed at the ankle, tank top now tucked in slightly, hair messier than when she arrived, but in a way that suited her. She leaned in a little. "So, level with me?" Lana said. "How long you planning to drift?" Joe tilted his head, thought about it. "Until I don't feel like it anymore. You ever feel like not drifting?" He looked up at her then, a slow, unreadable expression crossing his face. "Maybe." She gave a small nod like that was good enough. "We need help on the farm," she said after a beat, casual but deliberate. "Fencing, milking, grunt work. You'd be handy." Joe raised an eyebrow. "You offering?" "Room and board. Nothing glamorous. We've got the old workers' place. Everyone calls it the cottage. Red roof, bit rough around the edges, but solid. You'd have it to yourself. And what's the catch?" She smirked. "Early mornings, hard labor. The occasional home-cooked meal." Joe considered her. "You serious?" She was already pulling out her phone. "Let's find out." She hit Dad and brought the phone to her ear. It rang twice. "Yeah?" came a gravelly voice. "Hey, Dad, got a question." "Shoot. I met someone today. Guy named Joe. Good head on his shoulders. Tough. Got clipped by the Ute technically, so I owe him." "Uh-huh." Robert's voice had the cautious tone of a man with a daughter and a farm. Lana continued. "We could use the help on the farm with milking and other jobs. Think he could stay in the cottage?" There was a pause. "A long one. Does he know how to work?" "He looks like he does." "You vouching for him?" "I am." Another pause. "All right. Bring him up to meet us. All going well, he can stay in the cottage. You can brief him on everything when you get back to the farm. Thanks. Dad." Click. Lana slid the phone back into her pocket and looked at Joe. "You're in, if you want it." Joe didn't answer right away. He watched her, his jaw tight for a second like he was weighing something. Then he gave a small nod. "I'm in." "Good," she said, trying not to smile too widely. "We'll give you a day to settle in and nurse your hip. You can start the following day." Gwen, who was wiping down a nearby table, overheard their conversation. She walked up to the counter and returned, swinging her hips and carrying 2 more coffees without being asked. Round 2. "On the house," she said, sliding them down smoothly. Her smile was aimed squarely at Joe. Lana raised an eyebrow. "Gwen?" "What?" Gwen said, blinking innocently. Then she turned to Joe. "So, is it true?" "You're staying on Lana's farm?" Joe nodded. "Looks like it." Gwen leaned on the table, giving Joe a full view of her low-cut top. Her blonde ponytail swished behind her as she tilted her head. "Wow. Hope you like cows in early mornings." Lana shot her a nervy look. "You just want an excuse to bring him pikelets." "Pikelets, pies, whatever works," Gwen said, unabashed. Then to Joe, softer. "If you need a tour of Levin or just someone to explain what the hell sheep drench is? Let me know. Joe chuckled under his breath. Appreciate it. As Gwen sashayed back toward the counter, Lana leaned across the table and muttered with a smile, "Sorry, she flirts like she gets commission." Joe smirked. "It's fine. Not the worst welcome I've had." Lana looked at him for a long moment, thoughtful now. The sunlight caught a flicker in her eyes that hadn't been there earlier. She wasn't just intrigued by Joe anymore. She was invested. And Joe? For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he was under threat. He was still on the move. But maybe, just maybe, he'd stumbled into somewhere worth stopping. Hi. Before you watch the next chapter, remember to connect with J. Pilgrim. Discover the magic. Embrace the wisdom. Live the adventure. Explore the world of J. Pilgrim by checking out the links in the channel description. Also, remember that liking, subscribing, and sharing helps this channel reach more people who love fiction stories. See you in the next episode.